Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Mom's Funeral in the relationship subreddit. The post is titled, "My mom died a couple days ago. My boyfriend is refusing to go to the funeral or let my daughter go with me because it's religious. Like the title says, I just lost my mom a couple of days ago from ovarian cancer. I'm devastated right now and my boyfriend isn't helping me at all. My mom and I weren't on good terms before her death because of my boyfriend. John and my mom never got along because he's a deeply set atheist, and my mom was very religious. Major issues arose once I got pregnant and had my daughter. My mom pressed for me to have my baby baptized into the church, which I wanted to do, but John was dead set against it. He convinced me that baptizing her and indoctrinating her was a bad choice and that we should leave it to her to choose when she was old enough. I agreed. My mom didn't take this well at all, and after many angry and hurt arguments, she cut off contact with me. Not having my mom with me during my pregnancy or my baby's birth took a big emotional toll on me, but John insisted it was for the best and that he didn't want my mom near my daughter at all, claiming she was evil for hurting me. At the time, I was angry, so I agreed. I found out my mom was sick with ovarian cancer a month ago when she called me and wanted to talk. I was horrified and all the conflict kind of just fell away. I tried to make the best of my time with her, brought my daughter to meet her grandma, and tried to build good memories with her. I'm happy to say we reconciled and my mom and I made our peace with each other before she died. I don't want to trash my boyfriend, but John has been a pain in the ass since I found out my mom was sick. He said she deserved it, but quickly backed down when he saw how angry that made me. He refused to go with me to visit or help care for my mom. He didn't even really want to listen to me talk about how happy I was to reconnect with my mom. All he did was remind me that my mom hurt me and I should have no contact with her and that she didn't deserve for me to speak to her. I told him that my mom isn't perfect, but she also raised me by herself and was my rock for many years, and he should respect that. He said nothing outside of telling me there was no value in talking to her. Now, we're planning the funeral. I asked John to go with me and he refused instantly. He said he hated my mom, that she was a to our family, and that he wasn't going to church ever and it was rude and insensitive of me to ask. When I said I was taking my daughter, he had the nerve to actually tell me that I was not under any circumstances taking her. I have been through an emotional roller coaster this past week. I lost my mom after we finally made up. My boyfriend has been stupidly unsupportive and now he's refusing to let me take my child to her grandmother's funeral and refusing to come to at least support me. My daughter is the one thing that brings me comfort and I want her with me. Is that so unreasonable? It seems like the more I push, the more he digs his heels in and I just can't take it anymore. I don't know what to do. His attitude towards this entire thing is breaking my heart on top of my mom's death. User Trustavari said, "Holy crap, your boyfriend is awful. He doesn't actually think that attending one funeral will indoctrinate your daughter. This is just a sick power play. He wants to get one over on your dead mother. Think about that for a second. He is vying for power over you in relation to your deceased mother. Go to the funeral, take your daughter, grieve however you need to, then make him your ex." User Sarah8 said, "Your boyfriend is a jerk, not a partner. I am so sorry. Go to your mother's funeral and then evaluate if you want to spend the rest of your life with a rigid, hateful man. Is your daughter also his daughter? I am truly sorry." User Belbrita said, "I am so sorry. I'm 28 and I lost my mother last summer. It still hurts a lot. My husband is an atheist. Our minister performed a communion for my mom when she was in hospice care. He explained that he believed in an open communion and invited both my Jewish aunt and my husband to partake. Both did. My husband also attended my mother's Christian memorial service. My husband has been my rock during my mother's battle with cancer and since her death. I can't imagine not being able to lean on him while I've been sick with grief." You are completely reasonable to want your daughter with you at your mother's funeral. You are also reasonable to expect your boyfriend to show a little more sympathy towards you. I'm frankly appalled by his behavior. If you ever need to talk, just message me. I've found great solace in talking to people my age who lost a parent before I did. It's like a private club that no one wants to join, but all the members support each other for life. Update. Thanks to everyone who sent me condolences about my mom. It's been really hard these past several days, but I've been hanging in there. I tried being reasonable with John about how he wanted to handle things. I even told him, like one poster here suggested, that he didn't have to go to the service but could wait in the lobby with my daughter while the service was ongoing. Then she could spend time with my family after the service, but he shot that down again. He said he would be able to hear the service, and that was a violation of his beliefs, claiming that asking him to compromise on those beliefs was unconscionable and unfair to our daughter. I told him I had had it. This was the icing on a very large cake. I told John that as of this week, I wanted our bank accounts separated and that I'd be staying with my brother after the funeral while we figured out what to do, whether that meant a total breakup or counseling. It was up to him. He said counseling was for the weak-minded and that we were staying together despite my empty threats, insisting there was no way in hell he was letting me take his money. He became very loud and confrontational during this conversation, so I just let him throw his tantrum until he took my silence as agreement. I took my daughter with me to the viewing without any problems. John and I barely spoke that day, which was fine by me, but it hit the fan the next day. When I got up in the morning to get myself and my daughter ready, I discovered that he had the gall to park his car directly behind mine, blocking me in the driveway. I had no way to get to the funeral in my own car. John always drives to work, but for reasons I can only imagine were to get back at me, he decided to take the metro and took the baby carriage, bottles, and my pump with him. My brother and I have our differences. In fact, we haven't talked much since my mom and I were estranged, but he'll forever be a saint to me for what he did. I called him crying, and he and my sister-in-law arrived within 20 minutes. My sister-in-law calmed me down and helped me get my daughter ready. They brought along spare bottles, a carrier, and a breast pump. Thanks to them, I was able to go to my mom's funeral in comfort, and my daughter was an angel during the service. They calmed me down, and everything went perfectly. Even though I was a mess most of the day, having my daughter with me and having my sister-in-law and even my brother there to lean on gave me peace inside. I've made up my mind not to tolerate John's insane and controlling behavior anymore. He had a litany of excuses for what he did, but I don't want to hear any of them. I never wanted to be a single mom. I always wanted to raise my baby within a family, but I've decided that going it alone is so much better than doing it with this man who thought nothing of trying to kick me while I was down. My brother has arranged for me to talk to a friend of his who specializes in family law this week, and we're taking it from there. I still feel so guilty for what happened with my mom. I miss her so much. I hope from here on out I can make her proud of me despite my mistakes. This next story was made in the AITAH subreddit by a user named Forgotten Child. The post is titled AITAH for exposing my parents when they forgot about me on their wedding. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent even if no one is listening. So I was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad proposed to my mother on their anniversary, everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on to have a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond. The same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself into my family's hobbies and groups within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest in their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro, my parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, it was initially suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key and didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up in all the wedding planning. I noticed that my mom didn't invite me dress shopping and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out. So I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me anything about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago at the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without a stable income, my parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple of other friends that were attending the wedding but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it and that they could just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her, "Then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She went with my sister to buy hers and all the other female guest dresses months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and told me to suck it up, saying that I've never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding. It was about the fact that I was excluded from literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant fine and went to my room. The next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Instagram and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was. People quickly realized that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why. They replied that unfortunately, I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test with the caption, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone who had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before they left, and how they had actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side, while others couldn't believe it and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up for myself, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later when they came back, furiously attacking me for my immature actions and spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly and I began to feel awful. I hate my family and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second guessing everything I did, from not speaking up earlier to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me. Maybe I could have done more. User Front Rip said, "NTA, your parents messed up. They know it. Your siblings also messed up. They know it too. You weren't making them look bad with your social media posts. You were correcting a lie. I hope you are able to qualify for a full ride scholarship because something tells me you don't have much of a college fund, if any." User Obrina said, "NTA, can you move in with your grandma? Their history of rebuffing you whenever you try to participate with them suggests that this wasn't a one-off situation. It's as if they don't even consider you family. No judge is going to force you back to their house at 17. If you have a place to go, gather your things and your documents and leave." User Advanced Novel said, "NTA, your parents totally dropped the ball here. It's messed up that they excluded you from their wedding planning and even tried to uninvite you at the last minute. You had every right to call them out for forgetting about you. Update. I wanted to write an update earlier, but I'm still kind of a mess at the moment. However, I figured that since my post received such an overwhelming response and so many people commented and sent me messages, I should share the latest developments. First of all, let me start by thanking everyone who commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view regarding my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for everything that had happened. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think about how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I mentioned this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here as well. My grandma did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving towards me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far away. I'm always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, explaining how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me. She told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100%. She advised me to take it easy, but also to make plans for my future, assuring me that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better. I decided to listen to her advice and start figuring something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent. That's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily and promised that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position. We had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple of days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterward with a half-hearted apology, saying that he didn't know I wasn't included and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and that I posted the picture just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make my own problems public and pinning them on my family when they were all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip. At first, they berated me and were furious with me. After that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room and told me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it. They said this could have all blown over if only I'd kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her. I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay, but she wouldn't listen. She told me that she was long overdue for a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or that nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it a secret until she gets here. I hope she is able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon and plan on going no contact with them. I don't know, I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. Sorry for not updating sooner or commenting. As you can imagine, if you've seen my last post, it's been a busy week, to say the least. There have been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to respond to anyone until today. I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful and caring about me and my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar experiences of neglect and abuse. I just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to send kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to continue where I left off. My grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a hard time traveling, so for her to take this trip meant she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one who called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. Not gonna lie, it was a very intense and emotional moment. As soon as I saw her, I ran into her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying. I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry for making you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I was hit with all of this plus the guilt and anxiety all at once when I saw her, but she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days. Once they were settled in and I was calmer, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and emotional abuse, how miserable I had felt after the trip, but also for years now, how my parents had been trying to make me feel guilty for everything that had happened, how scared I was about my future, but that my number one priority at the moment was to move out of that house even at the expense of my schoolwork, how I had made arrangements to move in with my friend, how I was looking for a job, and how I told them about this post and how some people thought I might be an affair child, and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe enough to open up to them. After unloading all my concerns on them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would always be there for me. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me. She said the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 or 4 years old when my parents constantly complained about having a young kid in the house. They were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their activities but not me. Additionally, I was very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience for, making me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew my parents had saved more than enough for my college education, so that had never been a concern for me until now when thinking they might pull the funds away from me. But if they tried not to pay for my schooling, she would take care of it. She just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also said she would help me with rent and provide an allowance when I moved out. She was very generous and I thanked her for it all. However, I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me financially all my life. I went to private school, I have a rather large monthly allowance, I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far and how being dependent on them all my life has made me so vulnerable to losing everything. I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand on my own. Writing this and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life. My grandma insisted that I accept her help until I no longer need it, and I accepted that, but I will still look for a job and try to make it on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door. But before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs and could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for everything they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quieted down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red and my mother was sobbing like a child. When she saw me, she extended her arms in my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said, "Save it," in the coldest tone I could muster. My dad said that I didn't have to be a jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them. She told me they said my college tuition was never in question for them and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess. They were also going to give me a car as an apology for everything, but my grandma was having none of that nonsense because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face and coming up with these ideas on the fly. A party and a car would not make up for everything they had put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when my grandma told her that I had even questioned my paternity. She started crying then, but my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had repeatedly excluded me from all family events since I was a child. She assured me that she would make sure they made the payments for my schooling unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I could pay myself. I asked her to do that. I felt bad because it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. Although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents. However, she reassured me that everything going to me would be taken from my mom's inheritance. The next day, we went with my friend, her parents, and my grandma to the studio where we were planning to move. Immediately upon arriving, my grandma said absolutely not. I knew from pictures that the studio was very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette. There was also rust on the old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but figured I could live with it at least for a while. However, what really made me and my friend change our minds was what the adults pointed out. This studio was street level in a bad neighborhood in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes in the walls. Something I didn't even notice until my friend's dad pointed it out. So grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location and help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realized that with our likely minimum wage jobs in such a high demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. The plan is that we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment. We will pay what we had previously planned for the studio while her parents and my grandma cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, for which I'm extremely grateful since my grandma is going back in a couple of days and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to ensure I had a safe place to stay until we move into the apartment. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' house and setting up my space in my friend's home. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a jerk for what I had done, but before she could say anything else, I hung up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for everything he has done to me and for not realizing how poorly our parents were treating me. He said he's been doing a lot of self-reflection since grandma called and realized that he had been wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and that I'm not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me. But I also feel like I need to keep him away for now. Keeping a bridge open with my family feels like the right thing to do right now while everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future he will show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'll block him then, but as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me even more eager to find a job to take the burden off her, even if she tells me time and time again that she is happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move into the apartment, but right now I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and uncle while learning to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank this community once again for being so nice and helpful to me. To all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at too early an age, you've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system with my grandma, uncles, and friend, but you all are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have made. Opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me, so thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can express. A few months later, OP gave us their most recent update. It's been a while, and I'm sorry I didn't respond to messages or updates sooner, but I've been very busy, and I'm also trying to move on from everything that's happened to me. However, I'm back with an update on how things are going if anyone is interested in hearing. To recap where I left off, I moved to my friend's house after my grandma visited me, and we were able to stand up against my neglectful parents. My grandma and uncle left just a couple of days after I published my last update, and it was a very emotional moment for us both. For the first time in my life, I felt protected and loved by someone in my family. I'm sure there must have been moments throughout my life when I didn't feel so down and alone, but that week I spent with my grandma truly made me feel like someone was in my corner unconditionally. I'll be forever grateful to her for being there for me. After she returned to her hometown, I settled into my friend's parents' home while we looked for an apartment. She was already working as a private tutor for young kids, and she helped me get the same job as her, so now we are also co-workers. The job is great and the salary is quite nice for a first job, so I was over the moon to be hired. We also found an apartment. It's near campus, has 2 bedrooms, and a nice living area and kitchen. It's not big, but it's clean and located in a neighborhood primarily inhabited by college students, so it's quite nice with plenty of cool spaces to hang out and meet people. We're actually just in the process of moving right now, and I'm writing this update from my new bedroom. I celebrated my 18th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. I went to a restaurant with a few friends and had a nice time. The only drama that has occurred with my parents since the whole debacle is that they showed up at my friend's home on the day of my birthday asking to see me. I wasn't there at the time, but my friend's dad was, and he told me that they were both very apologetic and asked him to get me in contact with them. They left a letter with him in which they basically acknowledged that they had been awful parents but wanted to rectify their mistakes and begged me to talk to them. Maybe I'm cold for what I did next, but I decided not to respond in any way and asked my friend's dad to tell them to leave if they ever showed up again, which he respected. A part of me wanted to go to them and try to mend our relationship, but I also felt like it had taken all this effort for me just to show them I exist and how much they've hurt me throughout my life. If I go back now, I'd be betraying myself and all the work I'm putting into growing and becoming an independent person. After my birthday, I had a couple of weeks before we could start moving into the new apartment, so I went to visit my grandma at her house. I showed her the many pictures I took of the new apartment and told her all about my new job and the classes I'm about to start after New Year's. She was so happy for me. We had a family get-together to celebrate my birthday too. My uncles and cousins came over to grandma's where we had a bit of a party. My brother also came. I've slowly been talking more and more with my brother. Of all my immediate family, he is the only one who has never treated me badly. Although he was neglectful towards me and enjoyed my parents' favoritism, he never treated me poorly. I feel like he was also a victim of the toxic environment that was our home. I don't trust him fully, but he has apologized very sincerely, and since he lives near me, he wants me to feel like I can rely on him if I ever need something. I do feel safer knowing that I have at least one family member in my city who is worried about me and would help me if needed. I asked him once how my parents were doing, and he told me that ever since I left, he has limited contact contact with them. He blames them for the whole situation, whereas my sister insists that I'm being selfish and causing pain to my parents because I'm the problem. My parents also seem to have been somewhat ostracized by many of their friends after news of what happened to me got out. According to my brother, they are constantly asking for me and are now saying to anyone who might listen that they messed up and don't blame me for my actions, but they want to rectify their mistakes. I don't know if I buy this act. It feels like they know that now the best thing they can do for their reputation is to try to put the ball in my court regarding reconciliation so they can appear to have done their part. Now, more than ever, I'm focused on my future, and I don't really want to think about them. I go to therapy, and I'm trying to grow and embrace the love of my newfound support system. My friend, her family, my grandma, my uncles, cousins, and maybe my brother. I hope this will be my last update, since I want to close this chapter of my life. If I'm ever back here, it will probably mean something has happened. But I wanted to share the good news with all of you because you truly saved my life in a desperate moment. I was so down those days after the wedding, I felt like curling up in bed and trying to disappear. But you all helped me pull myself up and face the music. I'm now so much happier than I've ever been, and I'm looking forward to all the wonderful things happening in my life. So thank you all.